Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another interview. I am Edward Maag, your host, and here with my very special guest, Rose Neumayr. Rose, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, hi. My name is Rose Neumayr. I am currently the director of band and orchestra at Bernardo Yorba Middle School, and that's located in Yorba Linda, California, in the Placentia Yorba Unified School District. I am just wrapping up my third year there, and it's been a lot of fun, a lot of learning opportunities, a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard that's a great district to work in, and I'm sure you're, besides what's happening right now, I'm sure it's been a really good experience.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely a good experience. I was fortunate enough to do my student teaching in this district as well. Mm-hmm. So I've really kind of been around for about 4 years. So it's been a lot of fun. And you're right, it's a great district to work in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You were you with Eric Sampson at El Dorado?
Yes, I student taught with Eric Sampson at El Dorado, and then Jim Hahn at Tufree Middle School.
Right. Yeah. My first one of these was actually with Tim, who's there right now.
Yeah, Tim's a good friend for sure.
Mm. Do you guys get to like work with each other a lot in that district?
Yes and no. There are several events around the school year that all of our schools get together. Tim is teaching at a different feeder school than I am. I'm on the east side of the school district and Tim's on the west side. But there's events like our district band pageant in the fall where we have all 6 of our middle schools and all 4 of our high schools of their marching bands. We do a pass and review around the track with all the schools, and then we all play a combined number on the field, and then all the middle schools get to watch all 4 of the high schools field shows, which is really cool because a lot of the time most of these middle school students have never seen a field show. So events like that, I get to see Tim, but we try and connect every once in a while. I probably talk to him every once or twice every couple of weeks. You know, if I have a tuba question, he's my first go-to guy for sure.
Right. Well, that's fabulous. It's nice to work in a district with so many, like such a diverse amount of music teachers with different experience and
oh yeah.
Yeah. My district is we have 3 and just 1 for each level, so it's a different experience.
Yes, that's kind of that's what I grew up doing.
Right.
That was closer to what I grew up as. So having a school district where, I mean, really, I've got an endless list of resources and networking opportunities and people that I can just call up. I'm really grateful for that. That's not something I knew existed until I moved down to Southern California.
Yeah. You're from Chico, right?
Yeah. So if people, I'm sure people have heard of Chico. Chico is a small college town about 100 miles north of Sacramento. It is home to Chico State and also probably more well-known, Sierra Nevada Brewing. But most importantly, it's home to Chico State, which is actually where I got my bachelor's degree in music education. Because I grew up there, it only made sense to attend Chico State. We had, growing up in elementary school and junior high and high school, there were always music ed students from Chico State involved in all of my music experiences. So it really just made sense that, well, if I'm going to be a music teacher, that's probably what I'm going to end up doing. Makes sense. You know, it's right here in my backyard. I grew up about 2 miles away from the university. So,
wow.
it really just made sense to just end up going there, which really was an awesome experience for sure.
That's kind of a parallel to my path with Cal State Fullerton because I grew up about 3 miles away from Cal State Fullerton.
Yeah.
So, but so how were your bands like? Or let me roll it back. Like at the high school level, what was like the size of your band?
So when I was growing up, there were only 2 traditional high schools in Chico, in the whole town. And each school had about, I want to say close to 2,000 students. If you were in band in high school, we had 1 band class, and it was a half zero period and first period as well. So it was an hour and a half class, 5 days a week. We usually had between 80 and 90, sometimes it was just over 100, sometimes it was closer to the high 70s, members in that band. Everybody was all in, it was one large band all the time for everybody. We did have a jazz band that rehearsed on Wednesday nights, but that was pretty much it. It was a very, if you're in band, you're in the band. There's no, well, you're in this class, or you're in this class, in this class. We really got to play a lot of fantastic literature. You know, looking back, I look at some of the titles that we played, and a lot of the high schools now don't necessarily get to experience that. Or let me back up. As a freshman student, I was playing literature that I probably wouldn't be able to play if I were a freshman in a band that was ability split. You know, that was a smaller group. We wouldn't be able to play that. So having such a large, having the band, being in the band had its pros and cons for sure. But it was definitely different. And again, growing up, I thought that was how everything was. I thought it was just, well, you're in band and everybody's in it. And whether you are going to be first chair or you're going to hold up your instrument really, really well, there's a spot for you in band for sure.
Right. Yeah. And that's I mean, that's pretty close to how I kind of experienced band. Was like, you were in band. And then like at high school, we split it like freshmen and like everybody else. But other than that, it was all just one big like super group. And that does, like, when you can have like a big group, it's nice to have that, so like you're able to cover parts and all that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I remember being a freshman and we played Russian Christmas music, and I went from being an 8th grader, you know, in my junior high band, where our concert band was split into 2 periods, but it was still, you know, it wasn't 100 musicians. You know, you've got 18-year-old tuba players who can play. I walked in, oh man, it was so cool. It was just, that was the coolest thing, to go in and go, wow, we're playing like music. And now I go back and listen to recordings and I go, what? Okay, but hold on a second. But what an experience. What a feeling that was. That was such a cool thing to go in and go, oh, this is what it's about. This is so cool. So having everybody in one class, you know, you get to be a part of that, not just witness it from the sidelines. You get to be a part of that, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, and that's like, for all the things that people hate about marching band, I think that's one of the things, for me at least, is that you jump in and you're immediately with, like, you know, people of all sorts of different levels, and you can immediately be like, okay, I'm like part of this, and it's a cool experience.
It is. It's really cool.
Yeah. So let's see, what else was I going to ask about that, Chico?
Well, I will say my marching band experience was very different than at least what we do in my school district and what a lot of the Southern California school districts do. We just performed field shows. We did not do any parades. We performed field shows at halftime. I don't think I knew that there was competitive marching band until, I want to say, after I graduated from college.
Wow.
And only because the internet, you know, social media was really starting to spark, and I was able to see, oh, this is a thing. This is kind of a big deal. You know, there's a whole community of people that are really into this. And you know, for me, I thought, well, you know, marching band is okay, it's fun, but it's just kind of what you do in the fall. Our high school cycled through the same 4 field shows. All, you know, it was a 4-year cycle.
Yeah.
And being in Chico, you know, Chico's kind of a smaller farm town as opposed to down here where you've got town. Chico is, you've got I-5 and then you split and then there's a farm town and then there's nothing. And then there's a town and then there's nothing. And so for us to for marching band to be what it is down here, to be that up there, I think people would rather spend their time, money, and resources doing concert band, doing sit-down band. And that's not to say that there's not merit and value in marching band as it is down here, as it is, you know, in my community here. But it's just, I don't know, it's just a different thing. And when it comes down to it, I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
I think the big competitive marching band has a lot of opportunities that present itself, not just with, you know, going out onto a field and looking cool and all that, but it really, like you said, provides an opportunity for, as soon as you join that group, as soon as band camp hits, you're a part of it.
Yeah.
Everybody's a part of it. And it really, that establishing that at the beginning of your school year, or even before the school year starts, really just sets up the rest of your school year.
Yeah.
You know, and I think marching band is a phenomenal teaching tool in itself, and it's, I don't know, it's so cool. And it's the biggest thing is that I didn't know it was a thing until after I would have been able to participate in it.
Yeah, that is kind of wild. I mean, for my own part, now that I'm up here in Central California, and that's how it is. Everything here, every town is like 10 miles apart from each other.
Yeah.
And so if I wanted to have a marching band at my school, because my school is like, you know, I'm like developing the program right now. If we wanted to do marching band and we wanted it to be competitive, like, I don't even know what school would, like, where I would go, where to host a tournament that would be, like,
I know
that kind of stuff is impossible.
Geographically, it's more difficult just because it's not as condensed. The population's not as condensed. We, being at least in Southern California, you just have more access to more resources, you know, and a lot of these smaller towns, they don't, understandably so, you know, the argument for, this isn't where I thought this was going to go. The argument for marching band is, you know, you spend all this time and money and energy on, you know, 8 minutes. And I don't know how hard it would be to convince some of these smaller towns up in, you know, Central California and Northern California that, you know, we should really be putting all these resources into this because of this. Because I don't know. I don't know if that's a battle worth fighting. I don't know if, because it would be so much more to bring that to Central California, to where you're at, or to where I grew up. I don't know. I have a lot of friends who are up in Northern California, who I went to Chico State with, who are teaching up there, and they're just, we've talked, you know, on and on about it, and they're just not interested in bringing marching band the way it is down here into their program up there. And they have successful programs without marching band the way that it is down here. Yeah.
It's a different culture. And it's there's like a lot of trade-offs, and it's really, really hard to find that balance. So, like, going through that myself, it's interesting. Cause, you know, I'm like a gung-ho marching band person.
Yeah. I will say though, being a middle school teacher, and my middle school is currently the only middle school in our school district that still does competitive parade. So that means, so we still compete in parades and band reviews. It is a really great way to get your band out in the public's eye, out to go throughout your community. It's a really great way to make your band portable. And when you're trying to get support for your program, you know, your community wants to see it in action. So if you've got a group that can, even if it's just, you know, marching down the street, if they can do that well, if they can put on a really good presentation, you know, marching band right there is a really good tool for community engagement.
Yeah, definitely. That's to kind of diverge from marching band. That's something that one of my master teachers, he said about, like, playing at graduation. Like, that's one of the biggest reasons that he would always fight to play graduation, is that that's like the biggest showcase for your band right there.
It is.
Yeah. They're like people that would never go to your concerts are going to be at graduation.
Right, right. No, I mean, I tell my jazz band when we have performed at promotion, I go, these are, every 8th grade parent is going to be there, and they're going to see you. They haven't gone to any of our other performances, but they're going to see you, and really make sure that they understand, it's a big deal. We're representing the school, we're representing our program, you're representing yourselves. It's such a great tool. It's also a little nerve-wracking, but but it's fun. Really, it is fun. That's part of the job is taking risks like that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So let's get back a little bit to your own history. Why did you end up choosing to become a music major, and did you decide that you were going to become an educator at the same time, or was that a different choice?
So that's kind of interesting. I always remember wanting to be a teacher. My dad he's retired now. He was a teacher. He taught history. He taught PE. He taught all sorts of stuff. So growing up, I was obviously around a teacher a lot. I feel like even in kindergarten, I was going, I'm gonna be a teacher when I grow up. And I don't know if I said that knowing anything or if it was because, well, my dad's a teacher, so that's what I'm going to do. I think the first like actual realization of this is what I want to do. My mom likes to tell me this story, is that in 7th grade, I came home from school one day and I said, Mom, I want to teach music. Like, I want to be a music teacher.
Wow.
So that was 7th grade, and like I said, our community, I had experience with student teachers, and I had an understanding of, okay, this is somebody who is with us because they want to be a music teacher. So, okay, this is what I'll have to do that. And that's what I want to do. In high school, when it came time to start talking about like careers and like, okay, where are we going to go to college? What are you going to do? Like I mentioned before, Chico State kind of made sense because it was down the street. A lot of our performances were at Chico State. And it's like, well, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And I liked playing clarinet. I enjoyed it. I was very competitive within my band. I was first chair, I was section leader, I did honor band, I did the whole thing. But I was not interested in spending 8 to 12 hours a day in a practice room. I was not interested in that at all. I outside of band, I really wasn't. Clarinet to me was kind of just a tool to be a part of that group.
Right.
I remember, because I was also really involved in choir in high school as well. People would ask me, what do you like better? Do you like band or choir better? I go, well, I like to sing more than I like to play clarinet, but I like band better than choir. So I don't know if that made sense or anything. So, but
I think it makes sense.
But anyway, so no, I'm like, I'm gonna go to Chico State. So I enrolled and completed their music education program, and then towards the end of it, I got a little stir crazy. I don't know if it's stir crazy. I don't know if it's big fish in a small pond. I don't know. But I said I'm gonna finish my degree. I'll graduate, and then I'm actually a little burnt out. I'm never setting foot in the classroom again. Wow. So it was a time. So the semester before I was going to graduate, I actually did the Disney College program down here. I grew up, loving Disneyland, and that was exciting. And I thought, okay, that's what I want to do. Maybe I'll get into event planning. I'm really good at that in college. I'm really involved in planning all of our events as part of the music department. That's what I'm going to do. So I did a semester of the college program down here, moved back up to Chico after that, finished my degree. And then it was a couple years of just kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. Wow. Most of my friends were going on and getting their credentials in student teaching and getting jobs. And, I was looking for jobs. I was working, I was a lifeguard and a swimming teacher during college, and even up to recently.
Mhm.
And then for a little while, I worked as a office manager for the children's choir of Chico, so the local children's choir. And it was just basically doing all the administrative
Yeah.
duties that are involved in that sort of thing. So,
Mhm.
I was surrounded by music. And then you know what? I'm tired of being in Chico. All there is to do here is go to college or work at the hospital, or that's it. There's nothing going on. I want to move down to Southern California. I really want to explore being going into the special events industry, going to Disneyland. So I did a so I took a class to become eligible for the Disney College program again, because I knew that by applying and getting into that, I would have guaranteed housing. I'd have a guaranteed job down here. So I did that. Got into working at one of the hotels at the front desk, and oh man, let me tell you, I did that for just over a year. After teaching middle school for 3 years,
Mhm.
middle school is an energy suck, but we're I don't want to bash it too much, but I was more exhausted coming home from working at the hotel front desk than teaching middle school. Teaching middle school is
Wow.
way yeah. So needless to say, I was getting a little like, okay, this is not. I tried this, I gave it a shot. This is not what I want to do. And so then I started exploring. Well, I don't want to move back to Chico. It's fine, and Chico State credential program and music department, they're really phenomenal, but I really just need to be out and do my own thing. So I said, I'm staying in Southern California. I want to stay in Orange County. Let's look and see what's down here. And obviously the easiest pathway was to go to another Cal State. And
Mhm.
so after a little bit of researching and asking around, I figured out that Cal State Fullerton was really going to be where I would have the most success and the most opportunities by going through their program. So I entered into that, and that was rough. That was going back to school.
Mhm.
Was very it was weird. I wasn't that much older than most of everybody else, but I was
Yeah.
older enough, and I had already gone out and worked a couple jobs, and I was on my own and independent, and I got engaged, and so I was in a very different stage of life than a lot of the other people there, which
Yeah.
was fine and great and a lot of fun. And I met a lot of really great people there, such as yourself. But that was interesting. The other interesting part is that going from Chico State, where everybody in the music department knows everybody. Everybody, whether you're a performance major, whether you're an education major, everybody knows everybody. It's a small department, small school, small town, small
Yeah.
department, which I guess I took for granted, because when I came down to Cal State Fullerton, other than the faculty who had to approve me getting into their program, nobody knew that it was my first semester there until halfway through the first semester.
Mhm.
And when professor was like, "Wait, this is you haven't been here before." I go, "Yeah, no, I'm just here. I'm taking the classes they said I had to take, and okay." So it's a huge department where people don't know everybody.
Yeah.
I at least in Chico, I knew the four classes ahead of me and the four classes behind me, and I still talk to them. It's just a smaller group of people. And Cal State Fullerton, I know everybody in my credential class, and then I know a handful of people that did it after, and a handful of people who did it before, but really not as many. And I think a lot of it has to do with Cal State Fullerton is kind of a commuter school, and I think a lot of schools down in this area are like that. So instead of everything being within 5 miles of each other, you go to school and then you go home.
Yeah.
You drive to school and then you drive home. There's not really a lot of forced socialization down here. So I think going from that sort of school to, okay, you go to school, you get your job done, and then that's it. It was really hard. It was
Yeah.
going from like, we're all in this together, to, well, are you going to get the job? Are you going to be the person that we fight? What are we? Do I need to get to know? Do I need to? The vibe I got was, do I need to waste my time getting to know you? which was
Yeah.
what that was so weird. And I'm sure I'm reading into that differently. I'm sure people aren't actively thinking that. Everybody I talked to, every student I came across, they were very nice and very friendly, but it was really hard to get a vibe of, hey, let's connect, let's network, let's be a group.
Yeah.
And that was difficult.
That's
That was,
definitely like at Cal State Fullerton, like
but
the starting a group of people is like impossible. You just have to be like with this, like hanging out with people at the same time. It feels like all the time. So we just had an interruption. I was just saying to respond to what you've been saying is that's definitely like something that I've noticed and a lot of my friends have noticed at Cal State Fullerton. The music department itself is like everyone's very friendly and welcoming, and like it seemed like everyone was like we're down to work together and all that, but like once we're done with class, bye.
yeah.
It's very much like that.
And that, I mean, and maybe it's not, maybe if that's all how would you know to even think about that? If that's the only experience you have is you go to class, and then like you said at the end of class, like, peace, I'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Where I spent in Chico, we'd have our 8 a.m. class, and then our 9 a.m. and then our 10 a.m. and then we'd all move to a different part of the building, and then we'd all make sure to sign up for our GE classes together, and then we would all end up hanging out at somebody else's house. I mean, we spent 20 hours a day together.
Wow.
And I mean, it was, and so going from that to, okay, see you next class period.
Yeah.
It was very, very, very strange, and kind of a little, made it a little more difficult, kind of being an outsider. But I guess now looking back, I was just as much of an outsider as everybody else was. Everybody else was doing the same thing, going to class, and then that's it. So no, but going through Cal State Fullerton's program really was a good decision. Cal State Fullerton's credential program is very rigorous, especially the expectations to get a secondary music credential. Being involved in 2 different grade levels for instrumental music. And again, that is exactly what Chico State did. So that concept to me was not new. That was kind of what I expected to do. It was to student teach an entire school year.
Yeah.
But just the resources that were available to me by being a Cal State student were really wonderful. The networking opportunities, my student teaching placements, really all of that were really, I'm really glad that I ended up doing it.
Yeah, it's definitely the program is extremely rigorous, like you said. It's like just to get through that, like we lost tons of people that just couldn't cut it, and that even like there were people that made it to our last year that did not get their credential.
I know there were people who went through the entire year of student teaching and did not end up doing the whole thing.
Yeah.
And you're going to have that, I think, everywhere. And part of my quarter life crisis when I said I'm not going to be a music teacher, and I don't want to do that, is I didn't want to invest so much of myself into something that I wasn't 100% sure I was going to do.
Right.
If I'm going to commit to doing something, it's all or nothing. And if you're going to be a public school teacher, your all or nothing decision affects more than just yourself. It affects your students. It affects your colleagues. It affects your family. It affects everybody. And I wasn't ready to put all into that at the time. But now here I am, and definitely not a decision I regret. I don't regret taking those couple of years to kind of take a break and figure it out. I feel like that allowed me to acquire some skills that I wouldn't have otherwise acquired had I just gone straight from undergrad to credential to teaching.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's there's nothing wrong with taking some time off to figure yourself out.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes you a more mature person when you come back, I think. That's there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Can you speak a little bit about what it's like to be a clarinet major? I've had like a few different people on, tuba majors. So we had Taylor last week talk about being a percussion major. What's it like to be a clarinet major?
Sure. Well, of course, you walk around and everyone calls you Squidward. That doesn't change at all, at all. I was I know down at Cal State Fullerton, all of the music ed clarinet players are required to basically get a degree in clarinet performance. So that's not the case where I got my degree. You were either on a performance track or you were on an education track. So, you took your couple years of lessons and you gave your recital. I had to do a lot less as far as that goes,
Mm-hmm.
than what a lot of people down here have to do, which was cool, but also, maybe it would have been good to spend a little more time playing. But like I said earlier, clarinet's just a tool to get me in the door.
Right.
So I played in the wind ensemble. I played clarinet. And then we had a concert band, which was full of a lot of music educators, where I was able to play secondary instruments. So I really that's really where I got to play, get more into bass clarinet and I played E-flat clarinet and all of that. I played every day, did my recital, did that. I've talked to a lot of people down here at Cal State Fullerton and who talk about being the clarinet studio there. And they've got some pretty wild stories for sure that I'm sure you've heard as well.
Mm-hmm.
And being a clarinet student up in Chico, we've got some similar stories. Completely different professors. Just you're not sure when you go in for a lesson. You're not sure what to expect. Whether you practiced or not, that's one factor. If it's a Tuesday or a Wednesday, that's another factor. My clarinet teacher, he was also a fantastic piano player.
Mm-hmm.
And then he also taught a couple of our theory classes and history classes as well. So he's a very knowledgeable man. He liked to bounce around a lot. And like I said, you didn't know what you were going to get in your lesson. So I guess what I'm trying to say is being a clarinet player, at least in college, is stressful, a little unpredictable. You're expected to be able to play all the clarinets well. I played E-flat clarinet in our wind ensemble, and I loved it, to be honest. I loved playing it. I would go out and buy an E-flat clarinet if I had somewhere to play it. But but right now that's not going to happen.
Right.
We played. We had a clarinet ensemble that I was a part of that we got to play in some community events. That was a lot of fun. The only thing about being playing clarinet in college is if you want to be a part of something like jazz band or pep band, there's a space for you in pep band. You're not going to be heard. You're not going to be, it doesn't look very cool. It doesn't look exciting. And then jazz band, so I actually ended up playing, I played alto saxophone my first year, and then I ended up moving to bari sax for both jazz band and for pep band, and just having to, if I wanted to be heard, if I wanted an opportunity, I had to switch to that. So, that is something that clarinet players have to go through if we want to be involved in jazz band or pep band or some sort of anything.
Yeah.
There aren't as many opportunities unless you are on a second instrument. I will say, being a clarinet player in woodwind methods class, the clarinets, we had the easiest time learning all of the other woodwind instruments, and that's something I keep in mind as a teacher when I'm trying to get students to switch instruments. Is if you're a clarinet player, you're going to have an easier time learning flute or learning saxophone, just because I think the fingering system you have to think in the different registers. Flute and saxophone, they're pretty similar, at least in the early stages. They're pretty similar in the low octave and the higher octave. For the most, I mean, I'm talking, seventh grade band. I'm not. So that's something I keep in mind.
Not the extreme range.
No.
So,
but it's something to think about, when you're trying to get people to switch and stuff like that.
Yeah, I started life as a clarinet player, so.
And then you saw the light, huh?
Well, band director asks you to play something else. You're just like, sure.
Yeah.
And like,
I for a second I tried in high school. My friends, so our color, I know this is totally different. Our color guard members, in order to be in color guard, like I said, we just did field shows and football games. In order to be in color guard, you were required to be in band. You were required to be a band person. And so I had quite a few friends who were in band, but really they were just in band to be color guard. And so I think it was my senior year, I said, you know what, I'm going to try out for color guard instead and not play clarinet. And I think my band director was this close to murdering me. Saying, you're not gonna do that. I got in 8th grade, I got a little bored and of clarinet. My friend, she just switched from trumpet to French horn. I want to switch instruments, so I go into the instrument storage and I find some alto clarinets, and my friend and I would find alto clarinets, and my band director's like, yeah, that's a thing, and that was the end of that. And then I actually picked up a bassoon, and I was like, yeah, this is kind of cool. This is kind of difficult. So second half of 8th grade, I ended up playing bassoon in concert band.
Wow.
And I had a little bit of bass clef reading experience, but really not a lot. So I had to learn bass clef fast. And then that was all I did for bassoon then. And then in college, we needed a contrabassoon for a piece that we were going to play. And we had 2 bassoons in our wind ensemble, and the piece we were going to play, what was it? It was Sarsaparilla, John Mackey's Sarsaparilla. We need a contrabassoon. There's a big contrabassoon feature in it. It opens with an accordion feature. It's a really cool piece. But there's a big contrabassoon part in it, and our bassoon players were already playing bassoon. And that year we had enough clarinet players that like I'm going to play contrabassoon. I don't know if I'm putting down the right fingers, but the right notes are coming. But it's just so being a clarinet player like that and seeing other opportunities there, it can go one of 2 ways. You can either say this is my instrument, this is all I'm going to do, or you can use that to your benefit and say, let's see what else is out there. Let's see how easy it is to learn all these other instruments.
Yeah, I definitely, like, by the time I was in, I think, 8th grade, my teacher was like, hey, does anyone want to try out, like, bass clarinet? I was like, oh, heck yeah. And then it just kind of, like, kept going from there. It was like, when you're, like, a clarinet player, you feel like you're part of, like, the section. But you're, at the same time, unless you're, like, first clarinet or something, you're like, I can do something else. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't really matter. And that's a good point. That's a really good point. I was always in the front row in the first section, and then those times when I switched and picked up a bassoon or did something else, I felt like I can get away with it. I can maybe talk to my neighbor. I can, that it's really different being in the front row. When you can feel the spit and the sweat from your band director, and you're afraid of getting a baton thrown at your eye every day, to when you're like 2-3 rows back, you don't feel as seen.
Yeah.
I mean, you just don't. I played. I remember doing any sort of low woodwind in our contraband in college, and part of it is you're with your friends and you're hanging out, and it's a slightly lower pressure group. But part of it is I'm not in the front row. I can do whatever I want back here. I mean, what does that say about trumpet players who sit in the back, or
right?
We won't even get it. We won't even get into percussionists. That's why. Because you don't feel seen.
Yeah, that's always been like one of the things that Taylor brings up, is that the percussionists, those kids don't get seen.
They don't.
And a lot of them need to be. Cool.
This
Nice.
year,
Yeah.
I started. All my percussionists used to be with different groups, like they were built into each band class. And this year, I separated them out into their own class where it was just percussion. And that is probably one of the best things that I have ever done for my bands and for those kids,
Mhm.
because I was able to work with the percussionists every single day. So they were treated as both a standalone ensemble, as a percussion ensemble. We pulled out all the drumline equipment that we have. We learned a couple of drumline pieces. We did a little bit of percussion ensemble pieces, and then they were also the percussion section for all the bands and the orchestras as well. That was probably the best change that I have done
Mhm.
at my school right now, and we're able to get into more technique stuff that
Yeah.
you wouldn't necessarily be able to get into. Every one of those percussionists learned how to tune timpani. Every one of those percussionists were on mallets. Most of them for festival this year, we made it to our pre-festival before everything got canceled. But there were a lot of kids that learned mallets for the festival pieces that
Mhm.
otherwise would never be on that, because they're the opportunity to work with them one-on-one during class time, which just wasn't there if they're in a traditional band setting. It is a little rough trying to rehearse percussionists and then get everybody back together, but I really believe that the good outweighs the pros outweigh the cons of separating out percussionists like that.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Just with my own experience, it's so hard to like make yourself like stop and deal with the things that are going on in the percussion section when you have so many other things going on. And then on top of that, like the most of the teaching for band stuff, it's like this is all universal things for everybody except
Yeah,
percussion. And
yeah,
percussion, like, sorry, like there's not a lot we can do. Like when I do breathing with band, it's like, well, percussion, you guys have to like
yeah.
be able to breathe in time, but like realistically, they don't have to like be breathing like a wind player does.
Right.
And
You're right.
and like dealing with intonation and all sorts of things, it's just like we lose them for about 15 minutes of the rehearsal.
You do, and that goes into classroom management, especially at the middle school level. If you lose if you've lost their attention, good luck getting it back.
Yeah.
Good luck getting it back. And classroom management with my percussionists. This year was definitely a learning experience, because it was the first year I separated them out. It was a smaller class. It's just a different vibe in there. I'm able to be a little goofier with them with a smaller class, just
Mm-hmm.
because the personality that generally comes with a percussionist. We were able to. One kid, he he's one of our jazz band members, but he was trying to convince me to buy Megalomania for the jazz band, and long story short, I had said no at the time, and so he ended up arranging it for percussion, and that was kind of his first steps into arranging and composing and that sort of stuff. And by providing that class for him, I don't know if he would have had another outlet to do that so soon.
Right.
And it's they're part of the whole program and the whole group, but they're also their own class and their own group. It's a really unique class, and I'm really hoping I'm able to keep that sort of percussion class the way it is, because it's and I've learned more too. I've been able to get more into percussion. I mean, we all take percussion methods in college, but it's in one ear and it stays
Right.
there for as long as it needs to be. And if you're not using that knowledge, then it kind of just goes away.
Yeah.
And this kind of helped me really get into like, okay, oh, this is how you need to be. Okay, make sure we're holding the stick. Okay, make sure that's right. This is how you're supposed to play it hammering on this. Okay, this is what. I mean, it really got me to be able to think about those things that I wouldn't necessarily even think to pay attention to if they were part of our whole group.
Yeah, it's that, like, even something as simple as like fixing their grip. Like when I'm dealing with like my beginning band, I don't always have the time or energy to like be constantly correcting them when I'm dealing with everyone else. So like sometimes, you know, you see a kid like holding their stick with like that, and you're just like, oh well, you know, I'll deal with it later. It's so hard when you have so many other things, and that aspect of it is just so different that you can't like take the time. Plus, I like, for me, unless I have sticks on hand, I have to walk back to the back of the room to deal with that. So I'm glad that you have that.
Yeah, I mean, and I had tried moving, you know, when they're with everybody, moving them to the front. You know, that's a tool that I'm sure you've heard and tried and done all that. But for me, moving them to the front, and the other thing I didn't mention is I was wearing earplugs when either they were in the front, or a lot of times when it was just them, especially during marching season when they're all, you know, banging away. They're super loud. I was wearing earplugs, and having that all the time in the front, you know, the other students around them feel the same way. And whether, you know, a lot of them will be dramatic and go, oh, there's too much, but really the sound, just the constant sound is distracting. It can be distracting.
Yeah. It's all sorts of things. Percussion is, there's always a Midwest.
Hey, you know what? But it's necessary. It's fun, and they bring a whole different part to the group and the rehearsal.
I mean, that's like one of my favorite things about just wind band in general, is that it's so diverse, and like unlike an orchestra, the sound is so like heterogeneous. Like it's not just like we're all strings playing chords.
Right.
And they're like, without percussion we would be nothing. So
right.
Necessary evils, and the best we can do, or the best way to deal with that, I think is
I think you just gotta you just have to treat them like you treat your trumpet section or your clarinet section. But just know, I mean, you wouldn't talk to your flute section the way that you would talk to your low brass section. You know, or you wouldn't talk to your saxophone section the way that you're going to talk to your oboe, your double reed set. You're not going to address them in the same way, and you just have to bring your percussionists in like that. You know, they're part of the group. They're just another section.
Right.
Another piece of the pie.
That's right. Okay. So let's talk about your first year. How did that go? Your first year?
Oh boy. Your job during your first year is just to survive. I don't know how many people told me that in undergrad, in credential program, during student teaching, and even the first couple of months. Everybody said that. Your job is just survive, just get through it. And it wasn't until November where that clicked. That was like, well, all that's really expected of me is that I show up to work, you know, just to survive this year. My first year of teaching was also my first year following a director, a phenomenal director who had been at their school for a really long time. Rita Watson, of course, you know, everybody knows Rita.
Yeah.
A phenomenal educator, wonderful person. She'd retired the year before, and huge shoes to fill. And I knew that going into it. Everybody had told me that. I realized it. But you don't. I'm one of those people that if everybody's telling you, you know, it's so much harder than you think it's going to be, or you have no idea what's coming to you, I always like to, you know, go through whatever experience and go back and go, yeah, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that hard. It was, you know what? You telling me that is just making me want to make that experience that much, to downplay the experience a lot more. But holy moly, your first year of teaching, if you're like me and you poo-poo people saying, you know, you have no idea what it's like. You have no idea what your first year is like. on paper, everything can be super planned out. You can have everything right on paper, but emotionally and like mental and all of that, you have no idea. Oh man, I remember this 13-year-old kid he was upset at me because I had given him a low grade on a test because he was talking. And he was messaging me and saying, why is my grade this, that, and the other? And I let this kid make me so upset that I was like crying, reading these emails. And, well, wait, am I not a good teacher? Am I not? When in reality, this kid's 13. I'm the teacher.
Right.
I can do this. But letting stuff like that happen, I don't even know if it's letting that happen. I don't know. You gotta be okay with failing, and not in a way that, well, you just give up and, well, it is what it is. You have to go into your first year knowing that you're going to mess something up. Something's going to be, whether you mean to or not, and you can be as prepared as possible. You can have your checklist. You can have called everybody and done it, and you will still mess something up, and that's okay. Hopefully your admin and your colleagues and the people in your community, I'm not talking about parents, hopefully the people around you whose opinions you respect, if they see you make that mistake, if they see that failure, hopefully they will support you after that, because they've been there, they've gone through that. I remember calling other teachers in our district going, I need you to tell me the biggest mistakes that you made, so that I can feel like, okay, everybody's making these mistakes, even the people that plan everything are making all of these mistakes, and it's okay, and it's part of learning. And finishing up year 3, I feel like I made more mistakes in year 3 than year 1, but the difference between year 3 and year 1 is, I don't even know how to say this. I don't spend the whole rest of the day crying in bed. There were a couple of times my first year that I'd come home from a marching band event, and I would, change into pajamas and get into bed, and it was in the afternoon, and just cry because I was so upset at myself for having totally messed everything up. When in reality, the students had fun, the community is happy to see us, all of my colleagues, everybody around me knows it's my first year, and that how am I going to be able to do this perfectly in my first year? I can't do things perfectly. I can't do things the way experienced teachers have done them with that experience. And that's been the toughest challenge for me, even now, is when, starting to get comfortable in some of my teaching strategies and some of the ways that I run things and do things, just being okay with the fact that it might not work out the way that you want it to, but in a week, a month, a year, the only person that's probably going to remember this and be affected by this is me. The kids don't know what's going through your mind with all that. The parents don't know what's going through your mind with all that. Oh man, being a first year teacher is not for the weak. And then stepping into the shoes of a legend is also not for the weak. Because on top of me second guessing every decision that I was making as a first year teacher, there was a lot of, well, that's not how we did it last year. That's not how Mrs. Watson did it. That's not the same. And I'm hearing that from students and from parents. And my first thought is, well, if they don't like it, then it's wrong. And I know that that's not true. New is not always wrong.
Right.
Different isn't always incorrect. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's not. And I've even been on the other side of that. We had a new choir teacher. We had this great choir teacher in high school, and then she left, and we had a new choir teacher for my senior year, and I hate nothing. She could not do anything right. She could offer everybody $100, and I would still not be about that.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that until my first year was over, you know, and it didn't matter how much I read, how many times people said you're doing fine, how many times people said you're supposed to. It didn't matter until I finally was able to just accept it's a learning experience. And I still have a hard time with that. Being willing to, you have to take risks, being willing to take risks, knowing that, well, it might work, well, it might not work. And you just have to be okay with that. And if you're not, if that's not something that you can get through, this, I don't know if this career is for you, because at the end of the day, all these feelings and all this stress and all that is because it's because you want to do a good job.
Yeah.
You have integrity. You want to do a good job. You want to serve your community well. You want to make sure that your students are not wasting their time in your class. And just being able to be a little bit removed from that is, oh boy.
Yeah.
I wish that as a first year teacher, I would have been okay making mistakes. I would have asked for more help. Because if you think about it, think about when somebody asks you for help. You know, if somebody calls you up and says, hey, Ed, I don't know anything about this tuba thing, or I don't know anything about this, and how happy you are you're like, oh, well, of course I'll help you out. You know, of course I'll tell you about that. And that's it. But being the asker, I don't think about that. I don't think that
it feels like you're burdening them, right? Yeah.
It feels like you're burdening them, but you're not at all. I go back to an alumni thing in October for Chico State for band, and I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting at this discussion table with all these music majors, and I'm talking about this, that, and the other, and then it clicks. It's going, why am I not asking other people things? If I love to tell people, if I love to talk about what I like to do, everybody else has probably got to be able to like to talk about what they like to do. I mean, that's what we're teachers. And I don't think if somebody asks me a question, if they're like, if somebody from our credential program said, hey, I don't know how to play a contra B flat on the clarinet, my first thought is not, what do you mean you don't know how to do that? I mean, it really isn't. My first thought is, oh, well, here, let me show you.
Yeah.
It doesn't even cross my mind that, didn't you learn it? How could you have gone through the interview with that? How could you have gone through? I don't even think that at all. Right. And if I were to ask something like that a couple of years ago, that's what I'm fearing that the person I'm asking is thinking, and that they think less of me. When I talked to my mentor, Jim Hahn, and I've had this conversation with him several times. I went to go observe him before student teaching. And you go in and you observe, and at the end of the first day that I observed him, he said, okay, now do you have any questions? And so I took out my notepad of the questions that I've been writing down the whole day, and I fired him off, and I was listening, and I was like, okay, and I asked him all these questions. Why do you do this? What's it like doing this, that, and the other? And every time that we talk about that, he goes, you're the first person who came to observe me in over 25 years who had questions on that day, while you were observing. And you have to be willing to ask questions. You can't know everything. There's nobody knows everything. And that's what I think now is so cool about our career, is that you're always learning stuff. There's always something else that you can learn and achieve and be good at and get information about. And while you might be somebody else's expert. And that's something to think about too, is you're not always the asker. Oh, if it's not now, it's going to be soon that you're the askee, which is a crazy day when that happens, when you realize that, wait, they want to know my opinion. They think that I know something, that like they want to know what I know. Like that's crazy. That is insane. And it's a really cool feeling, and it's not like, oh well, I'm the know-it-all. It's just I get really excited to be able to pass on my knowledge and experience to anybody else, and they can take that however they want. And so I really I really wish that I had known that my first year, and I've gotten better about it, about asking for help and reaching out to people, and calling up the high school guys or shooting a text out to somebody. My biggest thing is I teach orchestra, and I'm not a string player, and so
Right.
probably a couple times a week, at least for sure when we were in the classroom, I was texting another one of our credential colleagues, Matt Fong, who's also
yeah.
in our district, and he, oh man, I bug him so much about all of my string questions, and I know some of them are silly questions, but he's so helpful, and he never makes me feel dumb for asking a question, and he's always willing to walk me through it and do all of that, and I think that's just so cool, and I hope that first year teachers and even people going into student teaching, and even people really need to start doing that as an undergrad student. If you can get good at asking questions, other people are going to look at that and go, I want to work with you, because you are showing me that you want to learn, you want to be here, you don't think that you know everything, because nobody wants to be around to know it all, and no first year teacher knows everything at all. I also would have told my first year self to take a couple sick days.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. I didn't. I've always been like that, where I'll go to school if I didn't feel well. I'd just tough it out. Just go to school. Or if I wasn't mentally feeling it, just tough it out. It's fine. But now it's like, well, I could have taken a day.
Yeah.
I could have taken a day.
For me, even
okay.
now, like I have to get to the point where I lose my voice. If I'm just like, if I have a cough, if I have a runny nose, I'm like, it's fine, I'll just get through the day. Like my band needs me. And
but at the same time, they don't like that's what we all think. You're like, this program will not go on without me.
Right.
But it will. But it's fine, really. It is fine.
Then I lose my voice for like a week, and I'm out for a week, or I can't do anything because I can't talk.
Well, that's the thing, is if you're going to tough it out for a couple days and be at 50% instead of just missing one day, and then you come back being able, and everybody says that. Everybody says all those things, but you just gotta, you really have to take a step back and think about, is who am I serving by doing this? I remember feeling guilty this year. I was a maid of honor for a wedding, and so that came with bachelorette party and bridal shower and wedding. And I remember putting in, days that I was going to be missing school, and at first I was going, what I'm going to have to miss all these days, what's my program's going to fall apart. And then I don't regret taking any of those days to spend time with close friends and family for experiences that are only going to happen once. Right. And my dad, who is now retired, he was the same way. He wouldn't miss school. You just don't miss school. And then at the end of his career, he had all this time saved up, that you accrue sick days, and he's going, probably could have taken a day or two,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, those are really good lessons that you've learned in the short amount of time that we've been doing this.
I got lots more, but
that's,
eat a vegetable. That's it. Make sure you're eating vegetables during while you're teaching, even if you don't want to.
That's good life advice, right? Eat some vegetables.
Drink some water.
Drink some water.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I was so bad about like bringing water to school, like probably my first 2 years, just like having access to water all the time.
Yeah, I'm still
I'd
bad.
get to the end of the day, I'd be like migraine because I'm so dehydrated, and, like barely able to get home.
And I don't know what your schedule during the day is like, but being able to leave my classroom to run to the restroom, I don't have very much time in the first part of I don't have the time, and so I tend to put off drinking water because because we have 3-minute passing periods. That's no time. That's not enough time at all.
No, it is not.
Yeah. No, it's
I
not.
mean, my schedule is a little bit nice because we're on a block schedule.
Okay.
So we have 8 periods total. And
Wow.
then it's Monday 1 through 4, Tuesday 5 through 8. Wednesday we get to do a crazy day because it's all 8 periods and it's a short day. And then
So,
Thursday and Friday are like Monday and Tuesday.
what do you think of having block schedule just in general?
Um, I don't like it in just about every way.
Okay.
I think high school students do not have an hour and a half attention span.
Yeah.
I think they have about a 45-minute attention span, which is about the right length for like hour-long periods.
Yeah.
So like, you get to like about 45 minutes into the class, which for an hour and a half period is about halfway through.
Yeah.
And you just kind of start to lose them. And there's not really a whole lot I can do.
Well, and then you have to trust that they're going to play their instrument on
Yeah.
the days they don't see you.
So yeah, that's the other thing. My first year, I had I had advanced band, and it was just the one period, so I saw them 3 days a week.
Okay.
My admin actually suggested this, and it was actually like brilliant. Is double blocking the advanced band, so I get to see them every day now. So
Okay.
for my band, my advanced band, that one class, it works really well because I get to see
Well,
them
then, yeah,
for so much
being
time.
able to see them every day, that's a game changer, and that's really important. And I find a lot of people with block schedule, they don't have that. And I don't know, maybe somebody who has a block schedule with a great program can speak against that. But whenever I hear the words block schedule, I start to like, oh no, oh no, because I mean, part of it is I'm gonna be honest, I don't trust the 7th and 8th graders to play their instrument unless they're in front of me.
Yep.
I mean, there are kids that will. Everybody's got those kids, but for the most part,
yeah,
I don't trust them to do that. And
I don't believe that they're practicing.
I should say there are
Either.
big handful of kids that are not going to do that unless they have somebody in front of them demanding that and expecting that from them.
Yeah.
And especially now with, devices in front of their face, when they go home from a non-band block day, are they gonna take time to assemble their instrument, or are they gonna take their phone out and do a TikTok dance?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
so and sometimes you got to be the bad guy and demand that of your students. And I don't know, I would have a really hard time with block schedule. I like the same schedule every single day. Yeah. I have a hard time when we have late start Mondays. So in the morning, we have, PLC time and all that, and the school day starts later. I have a hard enough time with Monday, different schedule, and then the rest of the week is on the same schedule. And not seeing anytime we have final schedule where we only see a couple classes a day, I have a very hard time with that. And that's probably just me. And I know there's a lot of people and teachers that like variety. Mm-hmm. But middle school in itself is variety enough. No 2 days are alike.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to walk into. If it's raining, there goes your whole day of lesson plan. Mm. One time I straightened my hair. I didn't tell anybody. There went my whole day of lesson plans because instead of something was different, something changed. If it's a costume day, if we have a fire drill, there it goes. If it's windy, everything's out. And that's the reality of middle school. Yeah. Is knowing that that's going to happen and being able to anticipate that a little bit, and some days knowing when you need to push to refocus, and also knowing when it's going to be a battle you don't want to fight, and just rolling with it, and maybe making those days, adjust them so that your kids are still engaged in your class and they still like your class, instead of you being the bad guy whenever it rains. And so then they're going to come into your class going, well, it's raining and we're going to have a miserable time here.
Yeah,
And
that's one thing that I think I've really evolved from my first year is that I'm a lot more flexible about that kind of stuff. Like
yeah,
if they're not paying attention, I don't want to lose it. So I'd rather just like let's do something else, or let's have a conversation about like refocusing, and
yeah.
just get everyone back on board and kind of like ease the rest of what I'm doing. It I think it takes a while to develop a sense, but you get a sense about like the room, and
Yeah.
how well you're being paid attention to, and if they're not like responding or engaged, like it's not worth continuing until you do something about it.
And it's not, and you don't have to be a jerk about it. You
Sure.
don't have to, if you sense that your room, that your class, you're losing the room, you don't have to slam your baton down and crash it. You don't have to do that. I mean, they're kids. It's whether you're in middle school or high school, they are kids. They are growing. They're not thinking about one thing for more than a cup. They're kids. They can't control a lot of the time. They can't control that, no matter how hard they're trying. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you're punishing them for something that they can't control, nobody wins in that situation.
Right.
But if you take that opportunity, I mean, sometimes when Kobe Bryant died, the first day back in school, out of my 6 classes that I saw that day, there were 2 that they were not going to be able to let go of that current event. And so we would play through a line in the book, and then it was, okay, ask questions, we'll talk. Okay, 3 more questions, and then we're going to play this line, and then making sure to stick with that, but allowing them to know that they could be in my class, and that if something's happening, if something's bothering them, that they have a place where they're allowed to have those feelings. They're allowed to talk with people. They're allowed, and they're not being punished for being 12 and not being able to compartmentalize so well. And a lot of what we do, we have to teach them how to do that, how to leave your baggage at the door, kind of a thing. But you gotta go slow, you gotta give them a little bit of grace. And I can't believe these are the words that are coming out of my mouth, because deep down I am okay, you come into class, we have things to do, and we're going to get them done. And if that's not what you want to do, then there's the door. I mean, that's how, but if I wanted to be successful,
Yeah.
I need to allow a little bit of grace. I need to be a little flexible, and I need to sometimes let my ego be at the bottom of the list and move up what these kids need right then and there to the top of the list.
Yeah, and that's definitely like, it's an admirable attitude to have. Is like, you guys are gonna leave everything that's going on outside of this room, outside of that door, and you're gonna pay attention, and we're gonna make some good music in here.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like high school and middle school. That's not the reality.
No.
And you have to be a patient enough person to like let them have a moment. That was something, I think about the week before we went on quarantine, that I would get questions about COVID, and I would answer them as honestly as possible, and and they'd be upset that the school hadn't shut down yet, and like all sorts of things. Would be like, everyone's trying to deal with this, and try to like, get everyone to be like, we're all on the same side, and we're all trying to understand and cope with this, and it's okay to feel about that and to talk about it.
Yeah. And that's what band was for me. That's what band and choir was for me in junior high and high school. Yes, it was a place where I could just shut everything out and leave it at the door and just do what we had to do. But it was also a place where I was able to feel the feels, experience the things that were going on outside of band. That was my safe space. That was that. And a lot of why I do a lot of what I do on a day-to-day basis is because of that, because I know that my room, for some of my students, that is their state. that is their safe space. That is it.
Mhm.
That is it for them. And if I remember, anytime that the band room was closed for lunch, I mean, of course, you're a dramatic teenager, and it's the end of the world. But I remember just going home from school feeling like someone was missing today, or
Yeah.
if my teacher was gone that day. It's just like, someone was off today.
Yeah.
Someone was different, and it's our job as a teacher to do the best that we can do to have our room be somebody's safe space. I'm not saying that, okay, yeah, come in and whatever you want to do today. Is that sometimes their safe space is having an adult there demanding and expecting high quality work from them,
Yeah.
because that might not be the case for them at home or in another class. Sometimes that their safe space is you holding them accountable for their actions, and that's because that's what they need. That's what teenagers need, and your room is the only place for that. Or maybe your room is the only place that you say hello to them, and they're able to just kind of be themselves without worrying about what the adult in the room is going to say or do to them. And that all of that is, like I said, it's a huge factor, whether I'm conscious of it or not, as to what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of my like mission statements. I like personally is that I think kids deserve a place like that. They deserve a
Yeah.
community at the school where they feel safe, where they feel heard,
Yes.
where they can hang out and be themselves and not worry.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm making that at my own school, and I'm glad that I don't know why it feels like it's a music teacher thing, but I'm glad that other music teachers think that way.
Well, and I think what's unique is our content area. You have to decide that you're going to be, as a student, you have to decide that you want to be a part of that. It's not like math where everybody's going to be in math. You as a student have to decide that you're going to be a part of this group. And then, at least for me, I don't allow students who are not in band or orchestra to be in my classroom at all. And part of it is everything's expensive. I don't want them to touch anything. But another part of it is just amping up that exclusivity. That, okay, here's a place that we can go, that only we can go, that nobody else is allowed to be in.
Right.
That it's kind of a like, I keep going back to the term safe space, but by setting that policy up, that's a rule that I'm pretty strict about. I mean, the way my room is, there's a fence that splits it, and on one side is inside of campus, and on the other side is outside of campus. And the gate opens after school, so kids can go out. But sometimes the gate doesn't get open immediately after, and so kids like to go through my room to get out. And I will stand at the door and be the jerk that if I see a student who's not mine, I will make them turn around and walk out. And maybe that's overkill, but because I have taken that seriously, and this goes for other things, because I've taken that rule seriously, I know that when I'm not there, or if I'm in my office or something after school, that my students will also take that seriously, and they will maintain the integrity of the band room, as a music only type of a room.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I love it. Let's see. I think we addressed the classroom management issue, unless you have more to add. Let's see. Let's just talk about your students and what you want for them, and maybe what the high schools want from them as you're sending them off to the next level.
Sure. So this is kind of an interesting topic that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. And our school district, the music teachers, I feel like we're currently in the middle of kind of establishing unified goals that we want our students to be at. You know, if they exit fourth grade strings, and we will have covered A, B, and C. Right now, it's not the same. So when I have 4 main elementary schools that feed into me, and then I feed into pretty much 2 high schools evenly. There is what we want kids to come into our program knowing, and then there's the reality of what they're actually knowing. And right now, we are finding out that what we want and the reality of what's coming in are very far apart. There's a huge gap there, and it's kind of where I meet with, at least before all this, I was meeting with the main high school that I feed into, Esperanza High School, and I was meeting with Brad Davis, the director there, pretty much on a weekly basis, and we've really started to have conversations about, you know, I'd like, for instance, jazz band. I'd like I'd like to have them coming in knowing, you know, all 12 major scales, being able to improvise over B flat blues. I'd like them to be able to know these rhythms. I'd like that. And I again, you got to set your ego aside and say, okay, let me try this. Here's what's realistic. If I've got a jazz band of all 7th grade new players who have never played, we're working on, this is how you hold the instrument, you know. But then in some cases, I'm able to meet those goals and set, you know, meet those standards and exceed those standards and say, okay, you'll be able to have this. But it's such at least for where I'm at now, it's really hard to say these concepts will be taught this year, because you have to, it's a linear learning process. You know, you got to be able to identify note names before you're able to read them in music, and you got to be able to make the association between what you see and what you hear and what you play. And you really have to make sure that you're able to do that before you can move on to the next step. And if you skip steps, then once you try to teach them, okay, here is the form of this piece, and here is the, you know, the chord structure of this piece, and here's this, they're lost and they don't really learn anything, and then they check out. And so trying to establish clear goals and clear expectations, and not moving on until your class has gotten that concept, or knowing when, okay, we're not ready for this, being able to evaluate that and kind of know what you're going to teach. I mean, all of my students, at least they should be able to play a march. They should be able to identify the intro, first string, you know, all that kind of stuff. They should be able to identify a handful of key signatures. My jazz band kids play all 12 scales. You know, be able to define a list of these terms, be able to play these skills, these rudiments, all of that. I feel like I am just now being able to evaluate the kids that are coming into me and set reasonable goals, because I can list all the things that I would love for them to have. But what's really going to happen? And it's different each year. You know, some years I have 0 clarinet players that come to me that can play over the break. So my clarinet players can't play all 12 scales if they don't know how to play over the break. So I've got to spend time teaching them how to do that. Really, what I want every kid to come out of my program knowing how to do, though, is how to appreciate and like listen to music. A lot of pop music it's not very interesting, you know. It's not very interesting. So I try to expose them to different styles of music, and encouraging them to kind of branch out and find stuff that they like, and try to apply musical terms and musical ideas as to why they like it. I really want every student, regardless of their ability level, their skill level, their experience, to be able to kind of self-teach a little bit, where I say, okay, here's your book. Here's what I'd like you to learn how to do. Go to this page in this book, do that, follow. I want them to have the skills and the confidence to be able to do that, because that to me is almost more important than making sure everybody can play all 12 scales, or making sure everybody can do is
right.
giving them the tools to learn.
Yeah, because if they can't, if they aren't able to leave you with the ability to independently like pick up their instrument and learn something,
right?
Then like kind of what's the point?
What
like,
is the
to
point?
a degree?
Yeah.
That's my philosophy with my guitar classes. Is that like they have to be like I bring it to the end of the year where like you have to be able to pick a song and learn it and play it for me. Like you have to do that on your own, and I'll help
and
you.
And you give them all the tools. Yeah.
And that's like sometimes it's pulling teeth these kids because they don't want to pick something. And
it is. And I talk to a lot of experienced teachers, both in music and then and in other subject areas, and I ask them, I go, has this always been the case? Because you and I, we've only been in the teaching field for a couple of years, and they've been in this since before everybody had a cell phone, since before the internet was readily available, and before a lot of the instant gratification culture was around, or as popular as it was. And I'm finding, at least what they're saying, and take it with a grain of salt, of course, but that it's harder and harder to teach that skill, to teach, being able to do that kind of thing on your own. That doesn't mean, I don't think that means we should stop trying. That just means we have to work a little harder, because our job, and I tell my students, this is the last thing I was going to say, but like what I want my students to know is, when you leave my classroom at the end of the year, at the end of 8th grade, is you will have learned you will be a better person, whether you are better at your instrument, whether you are better at looking things up, whether you are better at your language skills that you use in front of adults, whether you are better at making friends, whether you are better at finding something that you like to do, better at anything. And it doesn't have to be music wise. I use them playing their instrument as a tool to teach those skills, but really I just want kids to leave my class a better person. That's all. And I tell them that the first day of school and the last day of school, I go, okay, the first day of school, I go, you will leave my class and you will be a better person by the end of this. I guarantee that. And on the last day of school, I go, didn't I told you were better. And they are better people. Some of them learn to make choices that affects, more than just the immediate future. Some of them learn that, okay, I want to be section leader. To be section leader, I need to make sure that I'm attending sectionals, that I'm a good role model, that I'm not using profanity, that my social media looks, trying to make decisions that impact the future. I think that's more important than, here, play this. No, that's not right. No, that's not right. And we can teach those concepts through play this correctly, by having high expectations, by demanding, them to rise to the occasion. Yeah,
that's I agree with everything you're saying. It's
remarkable
how much I'm agreeing.
Once I get on my soapbox, it's real hard to get off. And I get real passionate about some of these things, just because I see a lot of, not in my immediate, but I see so much lazy teaching, and I had teachers that were, I had really wonderful, inspiring, passionate teachers, and I also had on the other end teachers that they were there to collect a paycheck, and that makes me so mad that people go in and they have a classroom of students, and it's just, and they're not into it, and they don't care. Because you whether you know it or not, you will make a difference in that student's life. And that's so corny, it's so cheesy, but you really will, because there are teachers that I still think about to this day going, I cannot believe that teacher made that decision and they did it this way, and I'm never going to do that, because I don't want my students to feel the way that I did, or to feel the way that so and so did. So I don't know, it's easy to be a lazy teacher, I guess, but then you're not a teacher, you're a babysitter. What are you teaching?
it's
I don't know.
yeah,
Again, I get
no, I mean, I absolutely
it's
understand where
important.
you're coming from. It's extremely important
Yeah.
to actively be thinking about the effect that you're making on students' lives.
Yeah,
And
I
if
think so.
you're not there for that, then like, what's the point? Like, why are you teaching
What
high
it, yeah,
school
what
if
it,
you don't?
I guess, and maybe I need to talk to somebody who approaches their classroom that way, where they're just there to give out the worksheets and go through the material and okay, that's it. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how you can. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how you could do that.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't know.
I get a lot of students that at my school, and I won't name any teachers, but and I couldn't if I want to, and I won't even name any subjects, but they'll come to me with homework assignments, and they'll go, the teacher just gave me this worksheet, and I don't know how to do it. And I'm just like,
Right.
how did that happen? Like,
I know. And again, sometimes take it with a grain of salt.
yeah, because
You
it's
know,
like
because they're
because it's a kid,
like, well,
but
did they really not teach you how to do that, or is it like we were talking about earlier?
yeah.
Did they just want you to? But there are teachers that just
Yeah, and sometimes it's even
that's
like
it.
the teacher means well, but they're just not engaging with
Yeah,
the students at their level.
yeah. And I think that's a benefit that we have as being younger teachers too. That it's a little easier for us to interact, engage with these students because we're not as far removed from them as a 20-year veteran or a 30-year veteran
right.
Who's been teaching a long time, just simply because we are younger.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to something a little bit less contentious. How do you pick rep for your groups? Like, what are you thinking when you pick a song?
When I pick a song, I think about a lot of things.
Okay.
So if I'm going through my library, first thing is, has this song been played by this group in the last 5 years? Okay, no, it has not. Then I open it up. Do we have the instrumentation to do this? Yes or no? Okay. Will this serve as a good piece of educational music? Yes or no? And sometimes you're picking music to teach concepts, and sometimes you're picking music because it's what the kids want to hear. And you really have to have a mix of both. The gold star is when you can find a piece of music that does both of those things. But sometimes that's not always the case.
Yeah.
You also have to make sure that it's I think we took the same programming class in
with Dr.
Cal
Cornett.
State Fullerton.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and she really, I think she does a good job of it. Is you've got to be able to make sure that your students can play 75% of the music before you hand. Like they already understand 75% of what's going on. They know the notes, they know the rhythms, they know the concepts, because they want to be successful. And if you put something in front of them, and then even especially with the instant gratification world that we live in, and they're not successful at it, they're not going to want to play it. They're not going to want to spend time on it. If you put something that's too easy in front of them, and it's something that you're like, all right, this is what we're doing for the next 8 weeks, and it's 4/4 all quarter notes, and that's it. There's no dynamics, there's no nothing. They're going to get bored real quick, and so you really have to think about: is this going to be engaging? Is this achievable? Does this teach concepts that I want them to learn? And am I going to like hearing it for the next 8 to 12 weeks?
Right. Definitely.
Yeah, that's a big part, and I hate to say it. That part right there, am I going to like hearing it for the next 8 to 12 weeks? That is most often the factor that makes me put that piece in the no pile, because there's so much ear candy and middle school music that just sounds it's hard to hear for 8 weeks.
I'll throw an example
weeks.
at you. The middle school teacher, she was like, "Oh, I found this piece. Maybe your high school kids will want to play it." and it was an arrangement of Dark Horse by Katy Perry, which was like, okay, maybe it'll be like poppy and
Uh-huh.
fun for a little bit and for like, something. So we like sight read it, and it's just like I think it was the flute part specifically, but like everybody else too. But like it's just like quarter, 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 quarter,
Yeah.
quarter, quarter, and it's just like bad. Just it's boring. It's the melodies like not recognizable enough and like not fun enough to make it interesting, and everybody is just on quarter notes the whole time. It's not changing.
Yeah.
It doesn't change instrumentation. It doesn't do anything. It's just the same thing over and
It
over.
is.
And I
There's
hated
so
it.
much.
The kids hated it. It was bad. So we put it
And
away after a sight
sometimes,
read.
yeah, sometimes you'll put that same piece of music in front of another group of kids, and they'll
Mm-hmm.
love it, and it'll be a different vibe.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just got to find a different piece of music.
Mm-hmm.
I have a huge library at my school. I've got thousands of pieces in there, and a lot of the pop stuff is good stuff, but it's outdated, and
Yeah.
my kids don't want to play. They can't relate to it. That's a challenge that I'm finding, and so a lot of my music pieces that when I purchase music, I'm either purchasing new pieces written by pretty good middle school composers. I'm either doing that, or I'm purchasing pop tunes that I hope are relevant for the next at least 10 years. We played. I didn't want to buy Megalomania because I knew that in a year, it wasn't going to be. We played Circle of Life. We did an elementary performance tour. We played Circle of Life, The Lion King, because that was something that my students recognized, and that was something that the elementary students recognized. Being able to select music for your audience is really important as well. If I would not program the music that I program for festivals, that I would not play that same music at an elementary tour concert.
Yeah, no.
Because elementary students don't really care that, there's, it has a great ABA section, and then the B section just slows down, and then we have a trumpet solo. They don't want to hear that. They want to hear fast, loud songs that they know.
Yeah.
So just being able to know your audience, being able to know what the kids that you have in front of you, it's important to pick music that the kids in front of you can play. Because when they can't and when they don't, it's no fun for everybody.
All right. Yeah, I mean that's all that's pretty much what I think about, and I think most teachers are thinking about when they're picking things, and that's really what we got from that class. One thing that I learned, or at least I noticed at Midwest, and I kind of attended a couple of panels this year, was about trying to be more inclusive about your picks for composers. Are you thinking at this point of picking a female composer, picking African American composers yet, or is that a future thing for you?
I do think about it, because whenever we pick a piece, I talk about the composer to the students. A big part of it is I want students to know that composing isn't just for, rich white guys, but it's not. As far as making sure that, I don't include pieces by diverse composers just for the sake of including those pieces. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of, well, it's hard at this point because we're so flooded with everything else, right? And you have established libraries full of what you have, and you can't just buy a ton of pieces.
No.
So at my high school, I'm not even at that point where I'm I'm conscious of who I'm picking, but I'm more leaning towards picking composers that I think the kids should know about. So I pick Tekeli pieces and other things like that. And when I get a chance to be oh, this composer is female, and highlight to that so that like my students who are female can be like, I could do this. That makes it more important to me. But I don't.
See,
I'm not there yet.
and I don't know. In that, and this is kind of I don't know where I stand on
Sure.
this. If I'm sitting there as a female high school band student,
sure, and
my band director holds up this and goes, well, yeah, this is a woman composer. I'm going, okay, and
yeah,
and you really have to point that out to me that's why you're picking. I feel like I don't know, and maybe I'm incorrect. I don't know that you need to point that out, or maybe you do. I don't know. That's a good question that I should actually ask some people. Is that something you want pointed out? Because
yeah, I mean, I could imagine it could feel like othering, almost.
But maybe that is the right thing to do. I don't know. I just know when somebody goes, well, we had a girl trombone player. I go, that's
okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Are they good? Or are you just saying this because they're a girl? Like, come on.
Yeah,
come on.
I think that's definitely.
I noticed she's a girl. I got it. Are you okay? All right.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right on
yeah.
I think it's like a delicate balance, right? It is. I definitely think it's important to highlight diversity. Mm-hmm. But like when you're just bringing up that, like, oh, I have a female trombone player, or oh, this was just written, like this piece was written by a woman, like is obvious or not obviously. I think you need to bring in context, and I don't think it's like you shouldn't get like a you tried badge like immediately, like just because you have that.
Don't try to fill your bingo card with diverse composers.
It's making intentional choices and establishing like patterns of doing that. And it's not about you being the bigger person either.
No, when I program stuff, there are composers that are not white dudes that I will type into the music search site that I'm looking for, and I'll search and see if they have something that I want to compose, or that I want to compose, that I want to program, that I want to perform. But I don't, if my program ends up being rich white dudes, like, okay, then that's what it's going to be. But more often than not, it doesn't end up working out that way. And I make sure that my students understand why I picked the pieces I picked. I tell them this is why, because we're going to learn these concepts because this composer wrote it, and they're important because all those things. I don't pick pieces because, oh, well, it's a female composer, it's an African American, or it's an Asian. I don't do that.
Yeah, I think that's a fine way to approach it. Pick. I feel. Okay. The educational aspect and I think the artistic aspect are more important than just who you're choosing to write your pieces.
But it's also important to take a step back and make sure that you're not just having white guys on your program.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's like it's hard because sometimes that can feel automatic. You're just like picking the pieces that you like, or you picking the pieces that you already have, and those are like all written by the same 5 guys.
Well, and the same 5 guys have been around and established, and they're known names, and so it's easy to pick. Oh, I already know this composer. I know that I like the way he writes. I know that, but I don't know. Just take time. Don't just close your eyes and throw a dart and pick whatever. Just take time. I spend when I look for music, I spend hours listening to recordings of what's on the website, and then going into YouTube and listening to other bands doing it. and listening to even what what a high quality group sounds like and what a low quality group sounds like. Wondering, even if we don't make it sound perfect, is this still doable? Is this still something that I want to do? So I do know, and that was something else. Nobody told me how much time it takes to program. There's a lot of time and thought that goes into the pieces that I pick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same. I mean, I spend at least like a class period for every piece that I'm looking at. Like, I'm just doing the same kind of things, listening to recordings and trying to figure out if that's a good fit and if that's a good fit for the concert cycle. And then you give it to the kids. They're like, we don't like this piece.
Yeah. I hate that.
Yeah, it's so hard. It's like every time I have a sight reading day, it's like Wine City in my classroom.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear it. Stop talking. I just want to play. You'll like it in a month. Like, just give me a moment. Yeah. So, Rose, what are you doing outside of work to
oh boy,
continue?
outside of work? Yeah. I really enjoy cooking. Okay. And that kind of goes hand in hand with trying to set myself up for success. I do enjoy cooking a lot. I try to look for ways to make meals that I can bring with me to school. Make sure that I'm eating right instead of just eating, garbage and then feeling like garbage. So I enjoy cooking a lot. It's a stress reliever. It's fun. I'm always learning how to do new things. I just got another pug puppy. So I have 2 pugs at home. Lucy, who is about 1.5 years old, and then we just got Pepper, who's a couple months old. And I never thought I would be the type of dog owner who spoils their dogs, but if I don't have anything going on a Saturday, I'm at the dog park, or I'm taking the dogs to somewhere where we can do. So that's what I do. And then it's hard to travel during the school year, and it's hard to see like my family because they're all up north in the Bay. My husband's family is in the Bay Area, and my parents and siblings they're in Chico. But to travel when possible. Usually in the summer we go to Lake Tahoe or visit family out in Texas or do that kind of stuff. I also try to loop my traveling in with professional development. For instance, Chicago, going to Midwest. Yeah. Well, going to Midwest, traveling, I'd never been to Chicago before I had gone to Midwest. And so now when I go to Midwest, I try to go more often than not. When I go, I try to do other Chicago things and not just go to the hotel and go to the convention and do all that kind of stuff. But I really find that kind of taking a little bit of time away from where I'm at and then coming back, I feel more refreshed and, making sure I'm spending time with my family, my husband and my dogs and doing that, and making sure that I'm doing things that I enjoy and not just band all the time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it can be, band all the time, band at school, and then you go do your community band outside of that, and then like, it just starts getting to be like, oh, I'm just doing the same things day in.
It does, and I hate to bring up that SpongeBob again, but it's that one time where doesn't Squidward move to the village with all the other Squidwards, and it starts to feel like that, and it's like. It almost feels like you don't have the time or you don't have the energy to do something that's not related to work. But it's like we talked about taking sick days. If you don't take the time to do something else, you're not going to be able to be 100% when you come back to your job.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Do you want to talk about Midwest, or shall we skip the Midwest section?
I just that Midwest is probably the best thing that the best professional development thing that I've ever gone to. If you're gonna go, have a plan and a purpose. Don't just go to. I mean, you can just go to just go. It's really cool, but have a plan and a purpose, and don't be afraid to network and interact. I met some SoCal directors at Midwest for the first time, like at Midwest instead of at SoCal. And now, anytime I see them, there's a connection and a friendship that I've made. So if you can swing it, you definitely should go. I have gone to Midwest instead of our state convention the last couple of years because it's schedule and all that. I can only go to one, and it's just so cool to see what's going on around the rest of the country instead of our little bubble here. That's all I'll say about Midwest. If you can go, you should.
Yeah, definitely.
Sleep on someone's floor.
I went for the second time this year, and really it's just so nice to just go and see all the diversity of different things, and to listen to listen to other people talk about teaching for a little bit, and you just sit there and listen. Oh man, I got to meet Frank Kelly this year, like shake his hand and talk to him.
That's so cool.
Yeah, because he did a panel for his new beginning band books, his new series that he's doing, and there were like 5 people there, so he was like shaking everybody's hands and like talking.
Wow.
Yeah. It was crazy. I couldn't believe that like he didn't like fill the room, but it was fun.
But even, and I know I said we weren't going to talk about this, when that Midwest comes at it comes at the worst and best time of the school year. It's the worst time because it's usually the last week of school or right before final year concert. But that's also when I'm feeling like fried, like I need a break. But then I come home from Chicago so excited to go back to my classroom and so appreciative of my job that I really enjoy doing what I'm doing. And there's all these other people that are good at what they're doing, and they're so excited to share what they're doing. And it's really cool. It's really special.
Mm-hmm. It is. Okay. Final couple questions here.
Yeah.
So ideally, where do you see yourself like at the peak of your career? Like, what do you want to be doing?
I don't know. And this was a hard one for me to come up with an answer to, because in our job, you're always trying to achieve something. You're always you have a goal, and then you meet it, and then you move on to the next thing. I don't know. There are so many things I have not done yet, and I guess at the peak of my career, when I'm finally done, I would like to have been able to do everything I've wanted to do. I would like to have been able to have student teachers to be able to pass on my knowledge to them, to let them experience what it's like to be there. I would like to have, taught long enough to have somebody's child in my, wouldn't that be cool? I would like to have been involved in conducting an honor band. I would like to have presented something at a conference. I would like to have, there's so many things to do. Take my band to a conference, perform, do all these things. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And I feel like once I feel like I've checked all the boxes, if I feel like I've checked all the boxes on all the things I want to do, then I'm done. But you know what I mean? Yeah. Like if you're going to school and you're like, well, I've already done here's my list of 10 things I want to do, and I've done them all. And so what's the point? I feel like if you are at that point, you're probably not as invested as you were. I don't know. You're probably not as excited about it. Right. The day that the day I feel like I've done everything and learned everything, I should probably retire because what's the point? Yeah. As teachers, we're always learning. Yeah. So I don't know. I haven't actually written down all the things I want to do on paper. Like I don't have my list, which is I'm a list person, and I don't have that list written down. but I have some goals that it's like, well, I'd like to do this. And by saying it out loud, I don't know, saying these things out loud, it's just, I feel like sometimes it gives
them power.
People and it also gives people a chance to say, oh, you're never going to do that.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a whole different conversation, but I would rather just do it instead of talk about it, and give people an opportunity to talk me out of it.
All right. I think that's fair. Yeah. I heard a lot of good things, things that I think are worthy goals.
Yeah.
Definitely. Final question, Rose. Can you please name us a few musicians, educators, other people that have inspired you to get where you are today?
Yes, I can. We're finally here. It's the last question.
That's
I
right.
know. I talked a lot. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So I've got a long list. There's a whole bunch of people that have inspired me, who motivated me, have supported me, who have made me who I am today, and that includes, teachers that I didn't like. That includes bosses who didn't like me. That includes all these, and I'd rather spend time naming people who uplifted me and who did all that instead of, because there's plenty of people who were not supportive, but that's okay. So I kind of went through and made a short list. In elementary school, my second and third grade teacher, Mrs. Barrett, she made every day fun and engaging. So I think about that when I'm teaching. Every day was fun and engaging in her classroom, and I was really lucky to have her for 2 years. That was very, very cool. Mm-hmm. Mr. Daniels, who was my 8th grade history teacher, he was and still is a pro at clear and concise directions and expectations, and I found myself really liking that. And he was very strict. He said this is what he'd expect, and he would not accept anything lower than here. And this was, achievable, but it was still, this is what I expect, and if you don't meet this, then you fail. Which is what I thrived there. Mrs. Delgado, who was my junior high band director, she is a huge factor. Seeing her is what made me go home and go, hey, I want to be a music teacher, and she's still active on Facebook, and she's still active in the music community, and I know she's really important to the NorCal people. My high school band and choir teachers, Mr. Forrest was my high school band director, and Mrs. Bankhead was my high school choir teacher. And while very, very different, they both made band and choir the place that I wanted to be, a place to belong, a place to be, which was really, really great. Mrs. Bankhead had incredibly high standards, and you wanted to meet them, and she was phenomenal. In college, it was Dr. Royce Tevis at Chico State and Susan Tevis, who ended up being my boss, and I have a very close relationship with them. They showed what it's like to be passionate about your job and what you expect of your students and what you expect of yourself, and to pass on that passion to everybody around you. My mentor, Jim Hahn, who was my master teacher, oh boy, he put up with so much, and still to this day, I called him 2 days ago, and I was like, oh no, what do I do about this? And he's always there to be a sounding board, to speak from experience, to just tell me how it is instead of, beating around the bush. And then lastly, my dad, because, he really showed me that you can be a teacher, you can be a good teacher, you can be very involved and invested in your job, whether you agree with the politics or not. You can also balance school and a family, and make sure that you're able to be 100% at with both school and family. I don't remember him missing anything from my childhood because he had to do a school thing. Mm-hmm. And at the time, it's like, oh yeah, that's happening. But now, and especially being a teacher and seeing a lot of these students who don't have that, I'm really grateful for that. And even then, to this day, I call him up and I'll go, oh, wait till you hear what happened at this staff meeting. And he's there to laugh and all that. So, but I mean, I'm telling you, there's so many people. When I start to think about it, like it's amazing how much goes into making you what you are. I don't know. Now we're getting real deep. Making you into what you are. You know, there's so many other directors across the country. I'm really starting to spend a lot of time looking at other programs in other states and seeing those directors and talking to them and seeing what's working for them and how things are different for them in their state versus our state, and seeing how I can apply what's successful for them to me. So.
That's great. This has been really, really good, Rose. This is
It's been really long.
It's long, but it's good. It's been like probably one of my favorites so far. You've given such detailed and wonderful answers. So that's it for this one. If you're still with us, thank you for listening. This has been wonderful. Bye bye.